Hello, I'm Karma Kitaj, your host for A Livelihood, and today we have Riva Berkovitz, and Riva is going to talk to us about her many beginnings of new careers until she finally found her final act, she says, probably not final, and here she is.
Hi.
Hello, Riva.
Hi, Karma.
Hey, I'm so happy we finally got to meet.
Right.
I've been looking at your pictures for several months since
Okay.
I first heard about you. And so I gave that away, that you're a photographer now. We're
Right.
very excited to hear about it. But let's start earlier on, because you sent me a wonderful bio about yourself, and you've done all kinds of interesting things in your life. And I know you told me you've moved many times over the past 50 years or so. And so why don't you tell me a little bit about what some of those beginnings are that you've had in your life that really stand out as being maybe informing who you are today?
Well, I think that my first career as a teacher, which has lasted the longest, it lasted from the time I was 22 until I was, until now, because I still have one student that I teach. He's become like a grandson.
Yeah.
And is 24. But I have taught all the way through my life. I've had, maybe a year off doing one thing or another, but I've always come back to teaching, and I still feel that teaching is the mainstay of my life.
So what other jobs did you have? I know you lived in London for 5 years. And
That was particularly interesting because I had been fair housing here in Boston. I had been testing apartments. This is back in 1967, 68, 69, for racially unbiased housing. And then suddenly my family, we were all going to move to London. And I didn't know what was I going to do there. They were not going to let me teach. I just didn't know what I was going to do. And a newspaper article appeared in the Globe about the British Ralph Nader, which he wasn't, but he had started something called Shelter, which was really a Catholic agency for housing the homeless, started really to house the Irish, and they discovered it was not the Irish only who were homeless. It was if you had a family, that's what made you homeless. And so I thought, I'm going to see if I can do that, and lo and behold, it was across the street of my children's school. And I walked in and I said, I'm here, they were a volunteer-run organization mostly, and they trained me to be an intake social worker, and I did 2-hour intake interviews with families who were homeless, and then placed them through this agency. We would get them jobs in new cities, and it was just wonderful because I became part of the British social service system and met the most wonderful people that I couldn't have just met, ordinarily. And I've done it the rest of my life. I mean, my teaching has been basically educational therapy.
Right. So would you say it's within the field of special ed then?
Here it's special ed, and mine was special ed tutoring, mostly one-to-one. And the longest place I worked in this country was in Watertown, and there they decided, I was in middle school, and they gave me the children that nobody else could handle. And it was very exciting. So I'm able to sort of crawl under their skin and understand them, and I've never been unsuccessful, so I'm really pleased with my teaching career. I loved it.
So, but then you discovered this whole different part of your brain, I think, in your being. So tell us, because this is just another new beginning.
Well, it was funny. It was 6 years ago in the summer. The senior center started an art program, a drawing class. They'd never had it before, and it's one of the most popular programs there now. And I decided to take it. I don't know why I decided to take it. It was for 6 weeks, so it was 6 sessions, and I took it.
You had never done any artistic work?
No, I drew stick figures all through my primary grade teaching, and I loved art, but I didn't do it. It was not any talent I had. It turned out I could draw. I could make something look like. We had to draw our foot. And I drew it, and I looked at it, and I thought, oh my goodness, that really is my foot. because I know what my foot looks like.
Yeah.
And so I discovered I could draw, and one of my good friends, who died since, was a painter, and she came and saw my drawings. She said, "There's nothing I can teach you, just keep drawing." But it didn't grab me.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided, no, I won't have time to read books. So I went back. I dropped the drawing completely until the photography came out. But it taught me how to see. It was a wonderful course.
And then you told me that you were living in Griggs Park, which is a lovely, how would you describe it, like a cul-de-sac?
It's like a cul-de-sac. It was I think it was a baseball field. It has a muddy pond in the middle of it. And it had been landscaped, and it looks like, it has little cul-de-sacs for picnics, and it has a children's playground, and it has 24 weeping willow trees. It's just a beautiful place. And I would just go there and walk around it or sit there and look, because every aspect is a different one.
Right. Yeah. And I think you said that you had thought, well, could I draw this somehow?
Well, no. I sat there and I realized I couldn't draw it. That I couldn't draw it. I felt like, first of all, I was I wanted to do an impressionist painting of it. Well, I knew I couldn't paint it. I couldn't draw it. And all of a sudden I thought, I can buy a digital camera. I love the computer. And so I did. I went out and bought a camera that the New York Times had said was the best one at the time. A very small one. Bought a cheap one. And I started taking pictures of Griggs Park.
So here we have one of the first pictures up on the screen here that you took, right?
That's Griggs Park.
Yeah. And
these are past spring, this one, because what was very interesting this spring was that it was such a cold spring. The leaves didn't come out on the trees, but the weeping willows do start at a certain time when it's cold, and the forsythia. So suddenly there were all these slight buds on the weeping willows and the forsythia, but none of the other trees had leaves. So you could see pictures of buildings behind them. You could see things that you don't ordinarily see. It was a very, very beautiful spring.
So I think you're probably going to have to tell us, and here's another picture, a collage of some of the things that you do.
Well, in the center is a crop of a macro photograph of tall grass called Hudson Sentinel. And I had bought some at a florist, and I had it in a basket, and took it over to a light, and discovered once I cropped it that you got these very fine filaments, and I was just intrigued by that. And the others, some of the arching ones, are just more of the leaf. The lower left-hand corner one, that's on Lancaster Road. There's one house that I go to all the time. He has marvelous things, and in the fall he has tall grass growing there. I thought only I had it from the florist. It turns out it grows all around everywhere. And I did a number of pictures of the tall grass.
Tell us about how the New York Times found you. That's an interesting story too.
The New York Times found me through the Olympus camera dealer that I went to visit for some tips on how to use my Olympus camera. And the New York Times wanted to do an article on macro photography, so they called the different camera companies, I guess, and they looked at the different websites of people they knew of, and this representative had given my work to the marketing manager, I think, and she told the New York Times, and they liked what they saw on my website.
So what was that like for you to be
it was wonderful.
Featured in the New York Times?
It was wonderful. First of all, I was in Chicago visiting my daughter at the time, and so he interviewed me for 40 minutes while I was at my daughter's. And when it was over, my daughter looked at me sort of with new eyes, and she said, "Oh, gee, Mom, that was a good interview." I mean, it was just so exciting to have somebody ask me these questions.
And thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.